but also plays an active role in promoting peace at both regional and global level. In Southeast Asia, we initiated the Jakarta Informal Meeting um, to mediate conflicts in Cambodia, and also in the Philippines. We are party to international monitoring team in the southern Philippines, as you have the problem of Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and we facilitated also peace talks during the Thai-Cambodia conflict over the Preah Temple, engaged with Myanmar in Rohingya issue, and the latest being in Afghanistan. Not only peacemaking, but we also involved in peace building, because we believe that not we have to help countries that already resolved their conflict not to relapse into conflict again by um, assisting their peace, their economy or development. We launched Indonesian aid in 2019. It's a shift from an aid recipient to an aid provider. We emerged as a donor partner. We provided aid to Palestine. It's our commitment based on anti-colonial solidarity as embodied in our constitution, um, and also in Afghanistan. Um, Next, please. So, what are the lessons learned from the way forward of Indonesian foreign policy? We always support multilateralism because since the beginning, Indonesia has always believed that an independent and sovereign Indonesia was simply a prerequisite to the achievement of pattern of living that would guarantee the prosperity of the people. So we realize that cooperation with other countries is essential. It has made the UN the focal point of its overall policy of seeking good relations with all other nations. More importantly, we need to develop a strong multilateral institution. Hence, Indonesia has always been of the view that we need to reform the UN. It is evident that unilateralism is not a sustainable solution. We promote independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity because Indonesia aspires to become a middle power that has significant international influence and recognition. This aspiration is implemented by projecting soft power through sharing democratic and conflict resolution experiences. Um, Peacemaking and peace building, we believe that peace is never given. It must be developed and nurtured through dialogue, inclusiveness, and peaceful settlement of disputes and non-use of force. So our commitment in peacemaking in Afghanistan reflects our aspiration to develop external peace building efforts. And the last thing is we want to avoid bigger than neighbor policy as being reflected in Indonesian aid, because as achieving national interest is not always a zero-sum game. We can have a win-win solution, as can be shown in during the pandemic. A country cannot be selfish. You have to share the vaccines with the rest of the world. You cannot be the only country that has been vaccinated. All citizens are vaccinated, but you have to share it with neighboring countries as well. So we also understand that conflict stems from impartiality. So we understand inclusive economic and political policy. That's why Indonesia always contributes to conflict resolution. We aspire to graduate from receiving to giving assistance. We have a sufficient experience and fiscal capacity that we can impart to other countries. But at the end, the conclusion is Indonesia is a major contributing party toward peace. But at the end of the day, all are, of course, dedicated to national interest. We want to have an Indonesia that is sovereign, independent, just, and prosperous. Terima kasih, Melissa.
Terima kasih. Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful sharing. I do have a few questions for you, Council.
Yeah.
All right. There's a question here. How do you think the current situation in Myanmar may affect the Bangladesh and Myanmar relationship?
Okay, so we have to understand that for with regard to Rohingya issue, for the government of Myanmar, Rohingya ethnic belongs to the Bengalis, but the Rohingya people, they consider themselves as part of Myanmar. So this is completely different what we are seeing in the southern part of Thailand. The Patani wants to separate from Thailand, but Thai government consider themselves consider Patani as part of themselves. So this is a completely different situation, but um, we need to understand that. Once again, this is my personal observation. Doesn't necessarily represent the policy of government of Indonesia. We need to understand that if you want to engage Myanmar, particularly the military junta, you cannot force or dictate. You cannot have like finger pointing or like perhaps like what has been done during the past 3 decades by the European Union, the imposed embargo. It would not work. The Myanmarese people is one of the most resilient people in the world. The more you put pressure to them, the more you dictate them, the more they become inward and they become self-sufficient. As you can see, they could survive for the past 3 decades, so it won't work. So what we need to do is actually to engage them through dialogue. And Indonesia is actually one of the, I don't know if we are the only country that is considered as neutral by the military junta. So we could engage them, but we do not directly involve in the political dialogue, but more on humanitarian issue. We enter Myanmar through our humanitarian assistance, and even the Islamic, the green, not the ICRC, but the, I forgot the name. Even other countries like Malaysia or the ICRC, they asked Indonesia if they could be involved um, in the humanitarian assistance. So that's why I think the habit of dialogue has to be nurtured. We have to build trust among the conflicting parties. Thank you.
I hope that answers your question. And now we have
Yeah.
another question here. The Philippines has a very long history of civil war that is mainly between communist/socialist versus democratic government. Do you see any end to this conflict? And what is your advice to the Filipino youth?
Um, if we look at the conflicts, I mean, to become conflict mediator, because sometimes we play the role of conflict mediators, even with regard to the MILF Philippine vis-a-vis Philippine governments. We see that you need to build trust of both parties, because you cannot mediate a conflict if you are not trusted by either one of the parties. You have to be trusted by both parties. So that's why I think also there's a great deal of truth to the saying that diplomacy is too far important in the hands of government or diplomats alone. So I think it entails uh, the involvement of entire society, including civil society, Rotary, mass media, academicians, and perhaps grassroots. So I think building building of goodwill among individuals is not too different from relations among nations. So you may contribute yourself by contributing goodwills by nurturing a habit of dialogue. Uh, I think for, my final point is that foreign policy, along with diplomacy, is a matter of relationship among nations, but it involves aspirations, interests, and calculations. Uh, but if we look um, more in depth, I think foreign policy are also conducted by people. So people-to-people contact is also part of the diplomacy in general picture. So you can contribute from your side by perhaps I don't know, engaging people from different parties, from different point of view, different ideology. The key is we have to be have a wide uh, we have to have a open-minded mentality. So that's why we can accept differences and different values. I think, does it answer the question?
Yes, definitely. I have two more questions here. I
Uh-huh.
believe it is safe to assume that other ASEAN countries are not as successful in staying clear of being under influence from China and other Western powers as Indonesia. What do you think are the key challenges presented to this country from being able to follow Indonesia's footsteps?
I cannot speak on behalf of the countries because each country has their own consideration whether wants to be closer to one particular or major country. It's the nature of nation because sometimes we are in need of development, financial capacity. Not all countries have the financial capacity to develop, to finance the development. So they need international aid, for instance. So it's only natural that sometimes their foreign policy is somewhat influenced by the international aid or the aid comes from other major power. Um, I, I I think what country should do in general is to develop independence in terms of the economic dependency and also in terms of political dependency. If we are if we can develop ourselves, then we could have a self-sustainability. We don't need to rely on other foreign country. I think that's the only path that you need to take. Other than that, I mean, if you are relying on the upon perhaps donation or debt or foreign debt, we will always be dependent on other countries. We are still also struggling with our development, so we still have also foreign debt, but uh, step by step, I mean, eventually we have to be an independent and sovereign country.